From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to SBI TV, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today we're going to explore how new CEOs can stage and manage a turnaround. I'm your host, Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. Joining me today in the studio is Dave Ratner. Dave's the former CEO of Realm. Realm is an open source database provider. Dave's now an advisor to public and private boards on the topics of strategy, implementation, and execution. And he's actually starting a new role very shortly, which will become public. And we're excited for Dave as he continues on his amazing ascent as a turnaround guy. So Dave, first off, welcome to the show. Good to see you again, man.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so if you're watching or listening and you don't want to miss our weekly show, if you want to access the content library, you as an iPhone user can download our app via the Apple App Store by searching for Sales Benchmark Index. You can then use the iPhone notifications to bring your content to your commute, your travel, and your workout routine. All right, let's get started. So the CEO role is hard enough in normal circumstances, and I can attest to that. However, if you think about testing it in the fire, what we call a turnaround, it makes it even more challenging. So think about this as companies that have experienced consistent revenue decline, customer loss, employee churn. They truly are in crisis mode. The board gets more involved, and the one thing they usually do is they bring in a CEO who specializes in turnarounds. That's the focus of our show today. So Dave, before we jump into the show and kind of walk through what you've done, I think it would be great to educate the audience on your background, because I think one of the reasons why you're effective at what you do is the composition of your background. So why don't I turn it over to you?
Thanks, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to come and talk with the folks at SBI.
Yeah, likewise.
You know, I started off PhD computer science and wrote a lot of code, but learned a lot about problem solving and problem identification, root cause analysis as part of that process. Yeah. And over the course of my career, I've run engineering, I've run product and product management, I've run sales and operations and IT and support and basically every function throughout the organization. And I think that has really helped me, as we'll talk about. You know, doing a turnaround requires a lot of intuition about what's working and what's not, and really getting into it. And it's really hard to do that if you haven't been there and done it first.
Yeah. And Dave, a little fun fact, you are a triple black belt, if I understand.
I've studied a variety of different martial arts. That's true. You know, I'm a competitive person by nature. Yeah. And that happens both in my personal life as well as in work. And I think, you know, part of being, you know, a turnaround CEO or any executive is that, you know, will to win. Yeah.
Well, what I find interesting is Dave can not only outthink you, he can actually kick your ass too in multiple different disciplines. So if everything else doesn't work, you know, he can always default to that. So Dave, your background, you talk about having a PhD and being a problem solver. And I think people often think about when they walk into a turnaround situation, well, do no evil, but there's also this element around root cause analysis and what's the real problem. So I guess as you think about your journey when you first walk into a tough situation, how do you approach root cause analysis? Because everybody says it's not working. However, there's a variety of things that they put underneath the it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Matt. You walk into a situation, and even before day one, the board has given you their view of what they think isn't working. And as you get involved and you talk to individuals, they give you their view of what isn't working. But each one is only really a piece of the puzzle. Each one really ends up being a symptom of the true root cause. And, you know, to take a step back, there is no one turnaround playbook. There is no ability to sit there and say, let's do what I did last time. Let's take the team that I used last time, press go, boom, we're going to work. It doesn't work that way. And anyone who says it does hasn't done enough turnarounds to really see the differences. Because you might have similar symptoms, but completely different root causes. The way you got to get into this is you have to embed yourself in the organization. You have to get deep in, talk with people, listen in on meetings, sit in on customer visits, observe the organizations, do skip level meetings, talk, and everybody just gather all of that data and be a true sponge and embed yourself in the organization. You can't trust the data pieces that everybody else is saying because those are typically symptoms or seen from an isolated view. And you need to get a complete picture in order to really embed yourself in the organization. I like to sit there and say, you got to get deep in the organization to understand what's happening, then bounce back up to the top so you can really observe the true root causes and figure out how you're going to fix them.
So do you have a balance of intuition, qualitative, quantitative, a time frame? Like, how do you think about, I've seen enough to know I've actually got 3 or 4 root causes that I can go to work on across the enterprise?
Yeah, I trust my intuition a lot.
Yeah.
And, there's clearly a lot of data that you can study. And that data may point you down the wrong path if you're not careful, because it may be a symptom and not the true root cause. So I'll give you some examples. I was in one company where the board told me sales doesn't know how to sell. And it's true that if you looked at the data, sales wasn't making their number and salespeople weren't making their quotas and everything said that sales wasn't being effective. But when you got into and unpacked the real problem was that customers wanted to hear a vision. They wanted to hear a story. The customers in this market needed a consultative sales process. And what product management and product marketing was giving the salespeople was a spec sheet. And so fundamentally, the organizations weren't arming sales with the tools that they needed to be successful. And fundamentally, we had to figure that out by listening to the meetings, by sitting in on both internal and external, and really getting to that true root cause. And so, yes, there is data there. And that data in that instance came from observing what we were giving to sales and how we were presenting to customers. And I had everyone in product pitch me for their products and really unpack that. But you can't go in with an assumption of knowing what data you need to look at. Yeah. You need to embed yourself in that organization and use your intuition to then figure out what pieces of data are really saying what, and put the puzzle together.
So then, last question in this segment relative to how do we identify the real problem. What are the biggest obstacles you usually see to the correct identification of that when you first walked in?
Yeah. First, you're going to walk into the organization and everybody's going to have their own, I'm sorry to say, 2-bit opinion on what it is. You need to accept all of that with a grain of salt and put those puzzle pieces together. Second, you're going to have people who may not want to freely participate in this turnaround process. You're going to have people who maybe aren't completely aligned with the fact that we're going to turn this around and may actually hide information. They may actually be using this turnaround process to propel their own self-interests rather than the company's interests. You got to be a quick read on people, and you got to get so many different data points that you can understand fact from fiction, and you can figure out those kinds of data elements to understand who's working with you, who's working against you. Those can be huge obstacles. You're starting off as CEO of a turnaround, and people know that there are problems. So everyone in the company is expecting you to make changes.
Yeah, and they're probably on edge.
And they're on edge, and everyone reacts slightly differently to that fact. And some people are going to be, here's everything that's wrong. And some people are going to hide all the information and hoard it because they're worried about their own job or their own team. And you need to break through that quickly, efficiently, effectively. And the only way that I've learned to do that is just get very deep in the organization, listen, sit on all those different kinds of meetings, figure it out for yourself.
So Dave, always great to see you. Thank you
Matt.
for some great insight. Thanks for your time, your attention. I know you have a choice where you put your eyes and ears, and I truly appreciate it. As always, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number. Great job, man. That was good.
Thanks,
that was
Matt.
power-packed.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.